On today's episode of Locked On Wild, the opening bell has rung on the 2024-2025 season. So which Minnesota Wild players are we buying or selling stock in?
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new episodes, any pre- or post-game content as the season gets going. We also thank you for subscribing on any of your favorite audio platforms. We don't care where you listen. We care that you do listen. On today's episode of Locked On Wilds, we're taking a stock market approach to the 2024-2025 season. We'll be playing buy or sell. We will be taking a look at some stock splits, looking at the new Minnesota Wild line combinations for this season. And yes, we're doing some insider trading as well, with bold predictions at the end of the episode. My name is Seth Toupal, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. My name, as mentioned, is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, credentialed Wild media member, and captain of the show since 2021, here with Zach Zeman for a bonus episode today. And Zach, when I pitched this idea to you as another one that we could do on a monthly basis and have a lot of fun with, I think the fact that I got an all caps response was a pretty good indicator that this is a good idea and one that we're going to have a lot of fun with.
Yeah, this will be really fun. I think it's going to be, not just fun right now, but during the season as well. I think it's going to be cool to see how these players are fluctuating, and that's when the real stocks count. But, right now it's going to be interesting because, we don't know what they're going to look like yet. So it's like, if we're the real brokers or we're the real buyers, we're going to set these lines right, and it's going to be really fun, good kickoff to what's about to come.
Yeah, and I think no matter if you cover the team, no matter if you follow the team, no matter if you're a fan, I think the hope is that this season will be more even keel, and will lead to a better result than the last one did, where they got up to that just disastrous start in October and November. Yeah. And so before we dive into some of the players specifically, Zach, let's just talk about the team in general. Are you buying, selling, or are you going to hold on the Minnesota Wild to start this season?
Yeah, so, from what's projected right now, I haven't seen a lot of hype behind this team yet. And for that reason, I'm going to buy it. I think, just because it's so under the radar with a lot of questions, and especially with a healthy roster to start the year, I think this team can shoot up. I don't even know, rise up I don't even know the terminology. I'm not a business major, quite frankly. So I'm going to say, they have the ability to go skyrocket, and they have that ability. And I think it's going to surprise a lot of people if they do, but not me if they do.
I am going to put myself in the cautious buyer territory, because I think a lot of the things that really let this team down last year, injury, secondary scoring, special teams, I think the hope is that they will be better, and I think a few of them will. The question is going to come down to, like we talked about in the schedule release episode, the October schedule preview, the key is going to come down to how they do against those teams that are above them in the standings. And we're going to get a nice taste of that early on, but that's going to be something that's going to be a question that we won't really get answered until we see the Wild against all of those teams who are on paper better than them. If you want to be a playoff team, you've got to find a way to steal some wins against those teams. And so I am a cautious buyer at this point, but I certainly reserve the opportunity, as we're going to do on a month-by-month basis, reserve the opportunity to fully change that as we go. Now,
here, I feel I'm just going to rebuttal a little bit. I just feel a little more secure right now than I did last season.
yeah,
Especially, I just feel like that security feeling is definitely what is pushing me towards like okay, I can see something happening. But yeah, like you said, if you really want to be a playoff team, we just talked about this on the other episode, but you got to come out strong. And you have to, prove yourself on this road trip. This October schedule is pretty tough. And I think that, with the security, the new faces, I've seen a lot of like positivity reflected around like guys like Lauko. There's definitely some storylines to look into. And I think that with that, I feel like there could be some room for good potential moving forward here.
let's talk about a few of the players in particular. And I'm going to go with some of the guys that we are obviously buying stock on. The top 4 guys from a scoring perspective: Kirill, Joel Eriksson, Matt Boldy, Marco Rossi. Those guys are all, it looks like, going to be, there was a little question on Rossi with this before the change was made to put him on the top line. But now it looks like those guys are all going to be consistently top 6 scorers. They're going to be relied upon to do a majority of the scoring for this team. And I think they're going to deliver. I don't have any reason to suggest that those guys aren't able to, hold up their end of the bargain. And so for those 4 in particular, easy buy. Like, this is one you're not going to get a ton of return because you are paying a higher price for these guys because the expectations on them are so high. But that being said, you're still going to buy. And they just they're too important to this team to not put them in any other category.
Yeah, I mean, one player that comes to my mind in terms of like a good stock right now is Marco Rossi. I feel like that potential, I can see something blooming out of him. And if you don't buy that stock, then I have a feeling it might bite you later on. He's a guy I think, this is his year. I'm really looking forward to seeing his play and, who revolves around him and how he can push, his line mates up. And I feel like this is the year, this is the season where he can take that next step. And if I buy that stock, which I am right now, and it doesn't end up looking the best, then I honestly wouldn't be so distraught about it. I wouldn't be so heartbroken. I mean, the whole story about Marco Rossi, at least I bought the stock hoping for the best. But if it doesn't show up, that means other players are doing much better, and so be it. I think it's a win-win there.
Yeah, we'll talk about the line combinations and kind of what we like about him in segment 2. But if he goes most of the year with Kirill and with Matt Zuccarello, obviously right, Kirill is going to be the number 1 guy. But the hope is that the opportunities just present themselves so much more than last year, where basically he was the only one on his line scoring for the majority of the season that he wasn't with Kaprizov.
Right.
So those are easy buys, I feel like. I tell you who one of my players that I just could not be higher on for this team, and it's somebody that's going to be, he's going to be a 4th line guy, going to be a 4th line center, probably going to play some penalty kill. I am buying a lot of Marat Khusnutdinov stock this year. I think he's just in a position to kind of fly under the radar a little bit, but his speed, his aggressiveness, and the way that he plays every time he's out there is going to lead to some chances. That 4th line, I think, is going to be much better this year. I am buying a lot of Marat Khusnutdinov stock this year.
Yeah, let's just pool both of our stuff here and just
let's do
purchase that and let it fly to the moon, because it will this year. Marat Khusnutdinov will take that bottom 6 role and explode it for this Minnesota Wild team. I think he was so fun to watch last year, so fast, and there really wasn't a lot to expect from him as he made his way in. And it blew all my expectations. I think that his stock is going to be, down there right now, but if you buy it, it will go up, and I guarantee you it will go up. It's going to be a really fun year for him, and I'm excited to watch it all the way through.
Kind of reminds me of when all those people bought that. I think it was at GameStop stock
yeah.
and just GameStop stock. Thank you. And just exploded its value. We could be in a similar situation for Marat Khusnutdinov this year. Some of the other guys that I noted, just down as guys that I myself would be buying this year. Obviously, Brock Faber. As you'll hear in the bold predictions, I am expecting him to have a monster season for the Minnesota Wild this year. Jakub Lauko, as we discussed, I'm buying Ryan Hartman being able to still produce in a bottom six role. And the special teams, I think there is literally no way that the penalty kill can be any worse than it was. And so it's a good time to buy low on that group. And you pair them with the power play, which even though it makes us pull our hair out, they've been like a top 15 unit, I think, for the last 3 or 4 years. And they were 10th in the league this past season. So that's a unit that is going to continue to produce themselves. So those are who I all have in the buy category. In the sell category, and again, we'll evaluate this month by month, I have Marc-Andre Fleury, Marcus Johansson, and the third pair defensively for the Minnesota Wild. Sounds like John Merrill. He may be Thanos at this point. Just continues to find ways into the lineup. It sounds like he's probably going to start on Thursday. And I don't have to rehash the Marcus Johansson stuff because I've talked about it literally probably at least 2 or 3 times a week, every week since he came to the team. And on the Fleury side, 39-year-old goalie, it just gets tough at that point. So those are the sells. And then on holds, I just want to see more before I make a decision. The 3 goalie rotation, Freddie Gaudreau, Liam Ogren, Matt Zuccarello. I'm just going to hold on those until we see a little bit more of what they can do this year.
Yeah, I think the Fleury stock is an interesting one to, kind of let go a little bit because the production is going to be lower. Like you don't necessarily with 3 goalies, it's going to be hard to, like what is it going to be 40, 20, 20 or something like that? Like it'll be interesting. And, Fleury's not going to be asked to do a lot, which is something different there. And when he does, it's Marc-Andre Fleury. He's going to win games, obviously. But at that point, it's like you don't necessarily need him to play every night.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's a good reason you're selling. I think that's why I am too. Another interesting one is Matt Zuccarello. I feel like, a lot of his points do come from like the line mates around him. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how he can like adapt with maybe Kirill or maybe not Kirill. And like, if all that ends up working out, I think he's just a really interesting story. But Ryan Hartman on dad mode, I think that's a good stock to buy. I think he's going to be a much more entertaining player. I mean, he's already entertaining, but I think it's going to be a cool little fun story out of him this year. I'm a big fan of Ryan Hartman. I think I like all your picks here. I'm just kind of adding my little points to it. And I think you hit it spot on.
And I like on the holds, it's just a matter of needing, this would be no different than if you are putting money in the stock market. I need more information before I make a decision either way. I need my broker to give me a little more details on those particular stocks. I guess the hope, and this is something that I hadn't considered before this very moment with the 3 goalie rotation, is, as of right now, we think of Philip Gustafsson as the 1, Marc-Andre Fleury as the 2, and Jesper as the 3. And I think the Wild are hoping that pretty quickly on, Jesper slots up into that 2 spot. So we'll see what happens.
That's a good spot right there for Wallstedt. I think that he can have the ability to go up to the 2 spot and really make some noise. And I think that trajectory of his it's a lot that a Wild fans have like been waiting for, like the prospect goalie, like our guy, if that story ends up blooming into like oh my goodness, we have Jesper Wallstedt, like it's going to be insane. And I think it's going to be someone who can really help this team in the long run, especially in the later months when you're pushing for a playoff spot. If he can progress and, develop as that guy, my goodness, what a good stock to buy. Yeah. Oh, that was a good rhyme.
I like that. That we're going to clip that. We're going to use that again. Let us know in the comments who you are buying or selling or holding for the 2024-2025 season. Players, special teams units, whatever. Just let us know in the comments, and we'll shout out the most creative in tomorrow's episodes. We're going to take a look at the line combinations with stock splits as we continue this stock market themed edition of Locked On Wild after this. Today's edition of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. College football is here. The NFL season is underway. The NHL season has already started. So there are no shortage of opportunities for you to secure fantastic tickets with Game Time. And Game Time wants to make the process so easy. You have more time to tailgate, more time to get to the arena early, and more time to take in the ultimate fan experience. Plus, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure as the NHL season gets underway, you check out Locked On NHL every single day for intel on everything going on throughout the National Hockey League. Statement win by the Florida Panthers over the Boston Bruins to get the season started. You can hear all of it all week long with our wide array of Locked On NHL hosts. All right, Zach. The best part about these stock market episodes, too, is I've got a hopper of about 10 different segments that we're just going to rotate in depending on what goes on with this team. And so we're using this one right now, calling it Stock Splits. We're going to take a look at the line combinations for the Minnesota Wild, what we like, and whether we think the combinations will hit or miss. And then we'll finish with some bold predictions. So let's start with the top. Let's start at the very tippy top. Kirill Kaprizov, Marco Rossi, Matt Zuccarello. That looks like that's your opening number one line to start the season. What's not to love? You got
what
Kirill,
is not to love? Oh, my
got
goodness.
Rossi.
That's going to be like one of the best, like flashy lines. I think that's going to be one of the most energetic, like highlighted lines. I'm pumped to see Rossi get that boost right there next to Kaprizov and Zuccarello. It's a great way to develop, two guys who are absolutely good at the game. Rossi's right in between them. I think it's going to be a really powerful line. Size-wise, not the best, but I do think that you can make up for that by, speeding around and doing other stuff, like dangling. There's so many ways around size. So many people are so quick to criticize, like, the non-sizable lines. And I think that I'm one of them, but with this line, I think it's going to be fun and it'll definitely get by.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a hit because now it is preseason, but Matt Zuccarello was tied for the team lead in points, playing primarily with Kirill Kaprizov and Marco Rossi. He had 8, I think, in the 3 games that he played. So if he is somebody that just, I think, plays a little more aggressively, having Kirill there, obviously the chemistry that they have together, it's been pretty well documented over the years. And Rossi is as bulldog of a go-to-the-net center as you'll find. I think they have all the combinations you need. I talked about this like a couple of months ago. It feels like every line combination that's successful has a perimeter playmaker, somebody that can be intermediate between the perimeter and going to the net, and then somebody that can get to the net And you've got all three boxes checked with this combination. So as long as everybody stays healthy, and as long as Matt Zuccarello doesn't kind of get into the mode where he tends to just pass, then again, if he's got Kirill, like, pass the puck to Kirill, I'm fine with that.
By all means, please pass the puck to Kirill.
Go ahead. He could have 2 goals and 70 assists this year, and I would be like, well, if he assisted Kirill 70 times, fine by me. So that's I think that line combination is going to be fine. The second line is the one, and we've talked about this literally since the season ended last year, is Matt Boldy, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Marcus Johansson. Like that is, I would say 2 players on this line, 0 problems with. They have great chemistry together. Bing, bang, boom. The third player, the one who I have been told is really good at zone entries. I've seen a couple of them. Marcus Johansson is going to be the key to this, because Boldy and Eriksson Ek, they can score together on their own, but it feels like if they get solid production from either Johansson or maybe Liam Ogren in that third spot, that's where that really kicks this line into high gear and puts them at a level to be able to complementarily play with the top line. So I am I think I'm going to hold on this one.
Okay.
I think I'm going to hold on this one for a month.
I'm going to say this is the line where I feel like you can experiment and juggle a lot with, and I think that's what they're going to do. It's how you create a successful, like lines, depth chart, however you want to say it. You get a lot of people in that same role, but you see which one progresses and can hold that role the best. I feel like what you're trying to say here. It's one you want to hold on, but it's also one you want to see fluctuate. You want to see more before you officially buy in, and that's what I'm doing. I'm holding with you. We're gonna wait and see who really does fit in that the third player right there. We'll see what goes on, but I'll hold for now.
This is the combination where I ask my broker, I say, I don't feel like I'm getting enough return for what I have my assets in. Can I see a couple of different portfolio options to try to maximize it? Boy, for not having put any thought into the stock market approach to this before like the games today, I got to say, I think this is going to
crush.
Let's move on to the third line. Marcus Foligno, Ryan Hartman, and Yakov Trenin. As much as I like what the top line is going to do this year, this might be the one that I buy most aggressively, because I think this is going to be a line that no team in the NHL is going to want to play against. But you've also got a guy in Ryan Hartman who has the ability to score, and so he can complement nicely what Foligno and Trenin bring. I think third line's going to be a hit.
I'm buying it. Who wouldn't buy this, right? You get Marcus Foligno and Yakov Trenin, and then you get Ryan Hartman, who is like former first liner. Like, it's gonna be insane. A guy who can put up points. Dad mode Ryan Hartman. It's gonna be awesome. Marcus Foligno is a player I'm kind of cautious with. I know it's so easy to be cautious with him, but he can turn on the Jets, and I think that physicality-wise, that's going to be an essential line to this team, because it's definitely not up in the top two. The top two lines are kind of lacking in, but when you get a bruiser line like this, Hartman can put on the same amount of physicality as we've seen Moose do, and it's like, wow, this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, and the fourth line, Lauko, Khusnutdinov, and Freddie Gaudreau. I've developed this kind of thought for Freddie this year, is I think we're going to see Freddie do better, because I think he's in a role where there are much less expectations for him. He's not in a top 6 role anymore, where you expect that guy to be like a 15 goal, 50 point type player. He's not in that role. And so the expectations for him are way lower, which means he's just going to be able to go out and play.
Yeah, I
And
completely agree.
I think the fourth line is going to be fine too. Like I would buy stock in the fourth line as well.
Yeah, it's a line that we just said, like, Khusnutdinov can control that line, and that's a perfect spot for him and Gaudreau. I feel like them together is going to be kind of a dynamic duo. I think that'll be a very interesting duo to see, like, what happens in, like, later games and if they can move up and figure out the role and fit into the roles in the higher lines if need be. Yeah, definitely like a reserve line there. Players who can definitely move up and down, or not, just up rather. But yeah, I think Khusnutdinov down there with Gaudreau is going to be a perfect fit.
So, you look at the line combinations, and with the exception of one spot, there's a lot to like with what the combinations look like. But obviously, it's a pretty important spot on that second line. That could really have a big impact on how the season goes. And I have a thought as to how long we will see that line combination together, with bold predictions that we'll talk about to finish. We're going to do some insider trading.
Love it.
And so we'll finish today's stock market themed episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is also brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You don't have to have multiple tabs open like I do when I'm tracking my fantasy team. I've got like 10 tabs running so that I can watch every game at once, keep track. FanDuel can help simplify the process. Plus, when you head to FanDuel.com right now, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. It doesn't even have to be a winner. If you placed a bet on the Seattle Kraken to beat the St. Louis Blues, you came up just short, but that's okay. You still got $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So head to FanDuel.com right now to take advantage of this great deal. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder, we've got you covered fully for the opener. Minnesota Wild's taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll have a crossover with Jay from Locked On Blue Jackets. We will have a pregame hit with Denny that I think should be a lot of fun. I forgot to mention this in the first episode. We have arguably the biggest guest in Locked On Wild history joining the show for a special episode for Thursday as well. So it's going to be a 3-episode day before we even get to the arena. Then we got the coverage all throughout the game. We got the postcast. We got the 3 things recap episode. Who does it better?
Nobody.
I'll give you a hint. Nobody does. Zach, let's talk some bold predictions. We're insider trading because we're using what we know about this Minnesota Wild team that the national audience does not, to come up with some bold takes for the season. I have a scorcher right off the bat.
Let's do it. Why not start the bid off with the hottest one?
Yeah, it's going to piggyback off of what we said at the end of the schedule preview episode for October. I think Brock Faber this year is going to have a double-digit goal, 60-point season. And here's why. Because he's just looked different all preseason in a good way. And so that Michael Russo wrote a great article suggesting why sophomore slump is not something we should expect with a player like Brock Faber. He just has this look to him as a guy who is kind of on the brink of taking it and running with it after a very successful first season. He's healed up. from the injury that he was dealing with in the final 2 months of the season. And he's going to be on power play 1 for a majority of the season, as long as that unit stays productive, which means he's going to get a ton of points. He is going to be part of the number 1 D pairing on this team with Jonas Brodin, because I do like that Jared Spurgeon's not going to be just thrown into a 25-minute-a-night role right off the bat.
Right.
You've got Brodin, you got Faber that can do that. And so I think Faber's just sitting on a ton of points, because with having Brodin as his line partner, he's going to be able to step up in everything. Number 1 power play. So I think any of those defensive points records for Minnesota Wild defensemen, they better take cover, because I think Brock Faber's sitting on an outrageously good season.
I completely agree. I think Faber is one of the most effective players the Wild are going to have this year. I think he's going to get the helm, and he's going to get put in those scenarios where you're going to see the most ice time. Obviously, you're going to be put on that power play 1 unit. You're going to be put in those spots where you're just going to be thrown into the fire. And, honestly, I don't see any other defenseman on this team who's willing to do those. With all due respect to Brodin and Spurgeon there, I think this is Faber's team. I'm buying the living crap out of his stock. He's going to blow this team up. And I think with him at his best, the Wild can be a playoff contending team. You do have Brodin and Spurgeon there as well. Like, this defensive core can really be the backbone of this team. It's something that can take this team far. And with Faber exceeding that next step up and proving that he can take the next step with this team in a higher role, this is going to be a very big year for him. And I'm completely with you there. There are going to be numbers that we have never seen out of any defenseman in a long time on this team. And he's the guy. He is the guy.
One of the other ones that I have, and honestly, this isn't I can't label this as a hot take. Oh, side note, I've got the Utah game on in the background, and they that place is going nuts. Just scored the first goal of the game against Chicago. Man, what an atmosphere.
That's awesome. Good for them, man.
What a vibe. Yeah. I can't label this as any sort of a spice level take. This probably is just like something that is expected to happen. But I think the Wild will get 4 30-goal scorers this year. And that doesn't even feel crazy to say, because you've got Kirill, you got Matt Boldy, you got Joel Eriksson, and with Marco Rossi in a top 6 top line role with better contributors on his wings, he should be a 30-goal guy too. And so, spice scale out of 10, that's probably a 3.
Yeah, but can Rossi do it though? That's probably the biggest question of that take, is can Rossi elevate and get those achievements? It's going to be tough. It's going to be different. But hey, it's a first line center. I mean, you got the time, you can do it. I think that's going to be a fun one to look at. This team's capable of it. It's really interesting how they're projected kind of lowish in the standings in the Central, because the Central is so stacked. But at the same time, the players on this team are capable of just breaking it. It's so good. This team is full of vibes. We can sit here all day just saying how awesome this team is and all these records are going to be broken. But stuff can happen, and regardless of the projections and stuff, it still is really interesting to see dang, there is some really good players on this team, and if you make all the right moves and get these players flowing together, some good stuff is going to happen with this team. And that's why I'm so optimistic about what's about to come. It's a big month ahead of us, especially in October. But hey, the season is going to be sweet, and I think there's going to be a lot of numbers that can be shocking to a lot of Wild fans right now.
I have one more bold prediction that I'm going to leave everybody with, because I've been cooking this up for the last 24 hours. And I think everybody's going to – I think this is going to be one that gives people a big sigh of relief. The Minnesota Wild, by the end of the month, will have a new wing opposite Matt Boldy on the second line. Here's why. because I am choosing to believe what Bill Guerin has said about players needing to hold their end of the bargain in terms of performance. Exhibit A. Exhibit B, Bill Guerin is good for one hockey trade a season. Good old fashioned hockey trade. And I think we see Marcus Johansson approached about waiving his no trade and going to a different environment because of the writing on the wall. And I don't think Bill Guerin makes a move to get somebody to come in. I think he makes a move to send someone out. And I think we will see Liam Ogren given an opportunity for that second line wing by the end of the first month of the season.
Interesting. That's bold. I will say that's bold. But I do like the thought process, and it is very valid. Mm-hmm. Getting a player to move his no trade clause is pretty tough, I feel like. But you never know. I think Billy G is that guy to make that move without any doubt.
Yeah,
I can't even name a GM who's more willing to make moves like that. And I mean, yeah, you're so right. Like he's bound to make one big move during the year. Yeah, so a big trade. You know what? A big trade in my book will happen this year. I think we're going to be kind of caught off guard with something. It might be in the goalie area. You know, you never know. You can't really. I mean, we've seen a couple teams do it with a 3 goalie, but it's going to be weird. I don't think you can make the Stanley Cup playoffs with 3 goalies.
No,
I will say that. So it's going to be interesting there. If in my eyes there is a big move, I feel like a goalie will be shipped off.
Wow. Okay. I like that we both ended with a couple of scorchers there because I think the Johansson situation will be phrased like this. We can give you an opportunity to go play somewhere, but it's just we've kind of hit the end of the line.
Yeah.
End of the line here. So we'll see. But all it comes down to is whether guys' performance drives up the overall numbers for this Minnesota Wild team. Because if it doesn't, when we get to November, there's going to be a lot of selling.
Yeah.
At least from a stock market perspective. So we'll see. But hope you enjoy 2 stable bits that we will be bringing you all season, every month here on Locked On Wild. That's what we got for your 2-episode Wednesday. So hope you enjoyed. Make sure to hit that like button if you have not already. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't already as well, so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. New episodes, pregame, postgame. We got you on lock. We're Locked On Wild. That's what we do. And we'll keep you up to date every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.